understand something.
The thing that I like most about being a dad is that I see that I'm about to impact the world. Yep. What's going on? It's your boy Humbledad, back with another edition of Humbledad Podcast. Excuse me. And today we're going to be diving into a topic that everyone is, obviously has an opinion on, and that is how to prepare for a biblical marriage, whether you're single, dating, engaged, or even married, and looking to strengthen your foundation. This particular conversation is definitely for you. We got some dope individuals that are going to be giving their particular perspective. Now, let's be real. Now, culture is constantly telling us what relationships should look like, but how does that compare to God's design? Are we truly preparing for marriage the right way, or are we just winging it and hoping for the best? If you want a marriage that lasts, that honors God, and that brings true peace, not just Instagram moments, then stick around. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to break down what men and women really need to do before saying I do. Plus, we've got real talk, personal stories, and practical steps you can apply today. Don't forget to hit the like button, or even drop a comment and share this with somebody you know that needs to hear it. So let's get to it. And before we start, the question is going to be, what's one lesson about love or relationships that you learned the hard way? And we're going to start first with Prototype. What's up, homie?
What's happening? How you doing, HD?
I'm good, bro. What you got on it?
Listen, one of the things that I found out, one of the lessons I found out, man, is that everybody's idea of love is different, man. It's one of those things where you try to figure out exactly if everybody's on the same page, but based upon your experiences, based upon what you've been exposed to, based upon everybody's idea of what they think love is, and then on top of that, they don't exactly tell you exactly what that is. So you have to go about trying to figure that out, and sometimes that may take a while. People are not always honest, and then they always try to get you to figure out exactly what love is and what it means to them. People love to say that they're open and transparent, but when it comes down to their definition of what love is, it's always different. So everybody's definition of love is different. So you try to learn a little something along the way. But I think that's one of the things, one of the lessons that I learned.
That's what's up. Appreciate that. Appreciate you for being here. You're very consistent, and I appreciate that.
My pleasure.
Hey, and welcome to the stage, none other than the Hulk Hogan in these streets. Prototype in the building. What's good, homie?
What's happening? Come on in and get yourself something to drink.
He didn't play there. He didn't play. That's what's up.
You got to teach people how to love you. That's the one thing I learned. Don't nobody just do what you need them to do. So you have to teach people how to be in your life.
That's really good. How to teach people how to be in your life. I like that. Appreciate you for being here. Hey, and welcome to the stage by popular demand, Mr. Charlton in the building. What's good, homie?
What's good, y'all? Can y'all hear me?
Oh, yeah,
we got you.
Okay. Apologies for the technical difficulties early, but glad to be here, man. Thanks for the invite.
For sure.
Yeah, so I love the question. What I want to offer, man, is like probably one of the most difficult lessons that I feel like I've had to learn as it relates to maybe just relationships is the fact that what worked in previous generations, what worked in my parents' generation, may not always be like a copy and paste for our generation. Like there's definitely stuff that we can glean from them, as far as the humility and patience and just the hard work and different things like that. I mean, there's a lots of things that we learn probably from observing our parents and observing those who came before us. But the reality is listen, times change, culture shifts, and the way that my dad served my mom, the way my mom served my dad, it might be different in today's generation. For me to expect a woman to be exactly like my mother might be a misstep. For a woman to expect me to be exactly like my dad, like I think it takes us learning from one another. I think it takes communication. I think it takes us just working at it, and just understanding like what can we glean from the past, and then what do we need to kind of revamp and kind of modernize for modern relationships. So that's the challenge.
That's what's up. I say for me, I mean, several things, obviously, but the one that sticks out to me the most about the hard lesson that I had to learn is that it costs you your pride. What I mean by that is that I have to love from the position of how the other person is going to be able to receive it. I'm an individual that likes to communicate directly to you and say exactly what I want to say. But oftentimes that's not how your wife is going to be able to receive that. Not all the time. There are women that do receive it in that way, but just because I would say that most women don't receive a direct response, it has to be some type of seasoning to it. And so that meant that I had to put my pride aside and say, you know what? I know it may not, I'd rather you listen to what I'm saying and not focus so much on the tone, because I may be passionate about a particular subject, but I know that what I'm saying makes sense, So that's my particular thought. Y'all say y'all can't hear me?
Charleston's having a hard time hearing you, but we can hear you.
Okay. So it may be a wire. So as we transition to some of these questions, that's kind of sets the framework of it, of what we're going to be talking about, because I think, and you all may disagree, I think the Bible specifically is one of the best ways to have a marriage when both people are operating from that position. It benefits both people, and both people will be able to see what serving looks like to one another, and how it'll actually be better for them as well as the kids and the people that come alongside them as well. So the first question that we have is crazy. Let's see. The first question that we're gonna go into is, what do you think are the key biblical principles that should guide a Christian marriage? You don't have to give me a lot. You can just give me one or two. I'll put it up here as we get together. You get your thoughts together. What are the key, or what are the key biblical principles that should guide a Christian marriage? And we're gonna start with you, Prototype. What you thinking?
To be honest, I don't know. I don't know. When I look at it from a biblical perspective, I don't really see a whole bunch of, other than love your wife and, respect your husband, right? But that's so basic, right? Like, how's that really apply? And I'll let y'all really speak to that, because there's nothing really in it that makes me be like this.
But you just said two, so. You
miss how I said that, or why I referenced that. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, yes, that's in the word to say. I mean, to say, but have I seen it applied in my actual life? You know what I'm saying? Do I see examples of marriage in the Bible? I do, but it don't relate to that, right? Because the marriages I see in the Bible be messed up.
Really? Okay.
Like, we could dive into that on how marriages in the Bible are messed up. And there's a bunch of them that you'd be like, ooh. So
okay, I like where you're going. We're gonna talk about that for sure. Lost, what you got? Lost, can you hear me? You're on mute.
Oh, I can hear you, man. I just got this. My neighbor got his engine rumbling, man. So I'll let Charleston go.
For sure. Charleston, what you got? Can you
catch me up, man?
So what we're talking about is the question that we had. There's a feedback on your end. Like, I can hear myself. Mic check.
Man. How about now?
Mic check. Yeah, that's better. Mic check. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. So the question is, what's one lesson about love or relationships Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm tripping. The question's at the bottom. What are the key biblical principles that should guide a Christian marriage?
Ooh wee. Wow.
You don't have to give a lot. Just give one or two.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know what? If I could cheat just a little bit, there is
Yeah.
a popular book out right now. It's called Love and Respect. It's by Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But if I just had to give two principles down, I would say that marriage boils down to two things: men desire respect and women desire to be loved. And I think that if we become efficient in understanding our roles, if we become efficient in communicating as a man, like what does respect mean? Like what do I need from my wife in order for her to communicate respect to me? And as long as the woman is humble enough, to submit to that concept of respect, I think that goes a long way. I think you can get a lot of things out of a man. You can get everything out of a man when you learn how to respect him. And I think you'll get nothing out of a man if you disrespect him. I don't care how much money he has. I don't care how well he was raised. I don't care about his family life, anything. You disrespect a man, you're going to get nothing from him. And then on the flip side, women desire to be loved. Women desire to feel cherished. They desire to feel protected. Whatever that looks like for her, same thing with women. I think you'll get nothing out of them if they don't feel loved. So if I had to give two biblical key principles as it relates to establishing a biblical marriage, I would say it falls along. And of course, that's all that is based on Ephesians 5. If I didn't say that at the beginning, or if that's not clear, he's basing his whole book on Ephesians 5. Those principles that were brought out by Paul. So
That's what's up. What you got, Lost?
The two I think that are key that both parties can do is lean on kindness and patience. Kindness is one of those things, man, that you choose to do. And I don't think a lot of times, man, people give credit to the power of kindness. The Bible says that a gentle answer turns away wrath. And that itself is very powerful. And patience is also giving people the grace that you would want yourself, when there's a little misunderstanding. So I think if you can start off and let kindness be your baseline and then let patience go from there, I think that right there could sustain any relationship. As long as you're willing to listen and as long as you're patient enough to listen, I think those are two things that are the basic building blocks of a good relationship.
That's what's up. And for me, I would say one of the most important biblical principles that connect the things that you all are saying is communication. There is a app that I'm checking out, which is the Bible version or the U version, I would say. And there's a plan that's in there, and it's called Achieving Awesome Communication in Marriage. And I would challenge anybody that is into wanting to have a productive relationship as it relates to communication in their marriage to check it out. And it literally is a very small paragraph, if you will, that talks about how to communicate with your spouse. And it gives you questions to have insight from on your own to see how does that relate to you talking to your spouse, right? And so I would say being able to communicate with an individual that is okay with being accountable to what it is that you're saying to them, whether it's a man or a woman. If you're not able to be accountable to the words in which I'm saying, yes, I may be feeling this way or I may think this way, but the first thing that you need to do is realize that I'm having a concern about how you have acted or you haven't done something. And vice versa. When I hear it, I need to not necessarily be on guard to respond, but I need to be prepared to listen. And that's a part of communication, right? Talking and listening is a part of communication that I think that many of us fail to garner and have a complete understanding. So that's one of the principles that I would say biblically would be very effective. Now, Proto, you were saying something. You said you had a question. You want us to talk about that? Is that what you said? What you put in the back chat?
Just about. Oh, he cleared it up.
Oh, okay.
He cleared it up saying it was Ephesians 5. I just read it like 5, like 22, I guess is what you were saying. Yeah, and I like that, right? As far as not only wives submitting to your husbands, right, but as far as how a husband should treat his wife, you know what I mean, by cleaning her, making her, stained or wrinkle free, without blemish and holy. And you see how you see how that could be such a hard thing for guys to kind of fall into. Like, I'm supposed to make my woman wrinkle free, without blemish, this and that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't want to compare it to a car, but if a guy get his dream car, and he makes sure the oil's changed, make sure everything's running, he cleans it, he waxes it. You know what I'm saying? But the car can't just run off on you. The car can't just go and let somebody else drive it around. Like, you know what I'm saying? So that's what makes it hard for men to be like, oh my gosh, like I can't find a woman. I get it. I get how that could be a hard little task, because women be out here like, I ain't listening to you or whatever. I don't know, but
yeah, that's really good. I think that men that are required to do that, they definitely, as the scripture says, you have to die to yourself, because we are definitely individuals that are kind of ego driven to some regard, right? But as the Bible tells us, Jesus talks about how we're supposed to be servant leaders, and so us serving our wives is going to be a part of how we communicate with them, how we love them, how we talk to them, which is the same thing as communication. But communication, I don't think, is just about the words as I'm thinking about it. It is also the nonverbal that is a part of that as well. So, your body language says a lot. I think it's one place, and I could be wrong, that 70% of your body communicates before you even say any words. The eye rolling or the sighs and things of that nature, as opposed to being a very active listener. I think that's the part that is helpful to women as well, because they want the things that they say to be valued, just like guys. But I think women want to make sure that they're being valued in a relationship. So what's your thoughts on what we're talking on what Prototype said, Lost?
I think that the baseline of any relationship, there must be agreement. You can have one person talking all day long and the other person doesn't agree. What good does that do you? You see what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times when people get into difficult situations, there's always at least one person who's willfully obtuse, and they don't want to listen at all to what the other person has to say. But that right there also destroys your relationship, because the other person is over there across the table and looking at you and say, you understand exactly what I'm saying, but you're choosing not to listen, and you're choosing not to agree. You know what I mean? And that right there sabotages any relationship. But like I stated earlier, patience is one of those things, man, that can run dry, especially if there's no agreement whatsoever. And that comes back to what you talked about earlier, Humbledad, about accountability. If you got one person saying, hey, look, I'm going to be accountable to this, and the other person said, well, I get to it when I can. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't necessarily agree. Then you can spend all day long trying to force agreement until one person just says, you know what, I've had enough. So I think agreement is one of those unspoken things that we really don't talk about a lot. And I think it really needs to be addressed, especially when it comes to a biblical marriage.
That's what's up. Charles, you have something to chime in on it? Is that about?
There's a popular verse that's quoted in scripture where it talks about being equally yoked. And that application kind of has a duality, because on one end, it's talking about not being connected with people who are unbelievers and people who may compromise you spiritually. But then there's a second application, which means that even if people are in the faith, if people are in God, if people are biblical, are they at the same place in God as you? There are different levels of maturity in God. There's different levels of just passion for serving God. So there's a question there of being equally yoked. And I think that same concept even applies in marriage. You talk about having a biblical marriage, are you talking about, as Prototype, as he was highlighting what he talked about in Ephesians 5, about a man presenting his wife unto himself, just as God, presented the church unto himself. The reality is that what's going to frustrate your patience, what's going to frustrate you being willing to just work is, are you equally yoked with your wife? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like on one end, it's like you may be in one place and she may be in another place. And here you are trying to work with her. Here you are trying to, accomplish a common goal. And are you constantly getting frustrated and be like, why don't you get it? Why don't you understand? We've been trying to do this, for so long and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, where were y'all at from jump? Did you not see the signs? Did you not see the red flags? And I think where a thing begins often is indicative of where it's going to end. And if you started off the relationships asking the right questions, if you started off the relationship being discerning, if you started off the relationship applying wisdom and being like, okay, let me talk to this girl. What's her past like? How many, what's her past relationship been like? What's her relationship with her dad like? What are her finances like? What's her business acumen? Ask all those right questions up front to make sure that you're equally yoked, to make sure you don't get frustrated down the road. Now, I'm not saying that once you get into the relationship and you find out, you know what I'm saying, that it's like, whoa, you uncover something that's crazy. It's like, I didn't know that going into it. I'm not saying that you're at the point of no return. All I'm saying is do the due diligence that you can up front to save yourself some of the frustration on the back end. Because once you in it, listen, it's time to tuck it in, bro. You know what I'm saying? You just gonna have to fight that thing through, but I think being equally yoked is very, very important.
That's it. Go ahead, bro. Yeah, absolutely.
How you start relationships, right? I hear you about asking all those questions. Once upon a time, being in the streets or whatever, you learn that asking too many questions, you could talk yourself right out of getting the yams. you know what I'm saying? So
that's a solid point, brother.
So you don't necessarily want to start asking those questions, and most guys, or nobody's really getting their first pick. You understand what I'm saying? Everybody's just kind of like falling into relationships. Now, I'm not saying nobody, but a lot of people not getting their first pick. So a lot of people just like casually dating and be like, oh, this person's kind of cool. I've been sleeping with her for a while. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I used to have a rule, like after 3 times we go together. You know what I'm saying? So I would never like have sex with a girl more than twice. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like 1 time, then the 2nd time if it was good. And then after that, I know not to have sex with that 3rd time because then she'll be crazy. You understand what I'm saying? So that's just my rule. That was just my rule on how I would manage.
Wait a minute. She be crazy. What made her crazy? I'm trying to figure this out, man.
Well, her emotions is wrapped into it. You know what I'm saying? You've been giving her too much. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
what?
After 3 times you had sex with somebody, y'all go together. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's
I completely read that the other direction. I thought Proto was like, I need to be discreet with this thing. You know what I'm saying? 3 times.
No, on the 3rd time we had sex, we go together. You know what I'm saying? So,
but you said she gonna be crazy though.
That's what
like her emotions are gonna be crazy. I gotta be more invested to maintain and manage her emotions in the pushback I'm going to get. So at that point, it's my job knowing that I had sex with this girl through more than enough times.
Got you.
She's not going to react in a positive way no matter what I do.
I got you.
So I have to manage and do right by her at that point, or there's going to be some collateral damage.
So there's more work to do once you had sex with her 3 or more times. That's what you said.
Yeah. Like there's going to be collateral damage, and you're playing with her, knowing that you don't want that kind of commitment from her. So when she busts your windows out, you can't be mad, dude. Like you understand?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I always thought about it. You know what I mean? So a lot of the times you just fall, like a lot of people fall into relationships like, oh man, like dang, past the three cycle mark or the 4th time, or like, you know what I'm saying? And you didn't ask those questions initially because you're going to talk yourself out of those initial short-term pleasures. You understand what I'm saying? So you just, now you're down the line. You be like, dang, I didn't know you had a train ran on you. Man, I didn't know your daddy used to touch you. Man, I didn't know this happened to you. Man, I didn't know your mom was in the street. Man, I didn't know your family was crazy. I didn't know you dealt with bipolar. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know you was bipolar and you was in a psych ward. And you find that stuff as the relationship is built, but it's too late. You understand? So you're like ask these questions and do all this vetting, and that's kind of how we always come back. Like, what is a man supposed to do from that time he's getting nothing to that time he's supposed to get something?
Well, if there's something is sex, then that's the problem. That's going to be the problem. If the expectation is, and we're talking about a biblical marriage, right? If your expectation is to get the cakes, that's going to be an issue, because that means that you have the wrong motives going into the relationship. But if you're thinking about marriage, then you should not make it a priority to get the cakes, because
I agree to that. Here's my thing with that is everybody's not playing by the rules, and the girl you want is also not playing by the freaking rules. So as you're trying to do right and be an upstanding man by a girl, and she's giving somebody else the cakes, and she's looking at you like you lame, like, well, you should have tried me. He tried me, so that's why I gave him the cakes. And you're like, dang, I thought you was a church girl. I thought you was a good girl. And then eventually you just be like, man, I'm just going for the cakes at this point. Because if you don't go for the cakes, you ass out. You're going to lose her regardless, because you're not going for the cakes. You're being a gentleman, but she's giving the cakes to somebody else.
But
so now you really don't want it at the same.
But then wouldn't that mean that she wasn't the one? And you didn't have your radar was off.
I don't think there's no such thing as the one. I think God gives you the ability to,
I agree,
to make the right decisions, right? So you rather be holding on to the cakes in the meantime to determine whether it's yours or not for long term, than to let somebody else be smashing on it. And then when you like, man, I really like this girl, her personality straight, she's into the word. And then once y'all start having those deep conversations, from the time you met her until the time you actually committed to her, she done went out with 10 different guys and 4 of them then smacked on your watch.
That's crazy. You saying some really dope stuff and some interesting stuff. You need to get your buffer fixed up for you to be in IT. Or is it me?
It ain't me, it's you.
It's you. It's my internet server. So what it sounds like you're saying, prototype. It almost is like if you don't have a plan and you don't execute it as it relates to wanting to marry this. If it's not marriage, then I'm sorry, no, that's not what you're trying to say. You're saying, like, let's say that the guy wants to be married to this woman, and she says, and he's moving forward with her, but he's not having sex with her. You're saying she's going to be having sex with somebody else while you're trying to get to know her, and then it will be too late. So you don't think that a guy can know that she has other partners?
Not if he's not asking the right questions. No. Okay. I mean, they lied. Like, they'll hang out with you, and you'll think you're having a good date. You know what I'm saying? And then right after you leave after the date, she called, the cleanup man over.
But couldn't that be, even if you are smashing, if you decide, okay, I'm gonna smash, but couldn't she still be doing that to other guys?
It's less likely though. You're trying to limit you're trying to limit the opportunities that she have to go off and
you just said 4 guys is what you said.
Yeah, so like if you're not smashing, let's say you're dating her, you meet a girl in the church, in the pews, right? Let's say this, and as you get to know her, you're like, man, I really want to do this right. So you try to court her accordingly. You understand what I'm saying? So you're taking her on dates, you're doing this, you're doing little things to make sure you get to know her the proper way, taking your time with her. But at the same time, another dude is smashing while you're doing all this courting. And about time y'all get into a serious relationship and y'all start being honest with each other, and you're like, man, I'm digging this girl. She's ready to, dig into me. And like, man, let's take it. Let's really like start trying to become something. She messes it up because you done found out in her honesty. Yeah, there was like 4 other guys in the time that we were just going out, hanging out. And now you feel some type of way about it. You know what I'm saying? Like, dang, like I wasn't really on it like that with other people. I was trying to get to know you, and here to find out you letting this dude over here hit, you let the drug dealer over here hit. You know what I'm saying? You're letting all these different dudes hit while I'm trying to make sure we go to church. I'm trying to get to know your people. I'm bringing.
But were you really blindsided by all that though?
What you mean?
Like you're saying, like you find out like these 4 other guys, you know what I'm saying?
She tells you. She tells you because she shows you one thing, like, you know what I'm saying. If a girl going to show you what you want her to show you, you know what I'm saying. So if you're a good guy, she's going to show you a good woman. You understand what I'm saying?
She's going to show you a good woman.
She's even going to play the part with you of. She's going to help you not sleep with her. Be like, I really like you. I want to make you wait. And then you're going to be a sucker. Like, yeah, she like me. She making me wait because I'm different.
How is that being a sucker?
Because you're falling for that game. She's going to tell you. She's going to tell you, I like you. So I want to take things slow with you. But she's only really taking things slow with you because another dude is already smashed.
So are you saying
things like that?
So are you saying that this dude that's trying to have a biblical marriage, that he should go ahead and try to smash so that he can hold us close and be able to transition faster?
Listen. I already mentioned at the beginning of the show, marriages in the Bible be messed up. We can go from Job and his wife. That marriage was crazy. We go to Lot and his wife. That marriage was crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's so many examples of wives being nuts. Like, you know what I'm saying? There was the one dude that was forced, the one pastor or prophet that was forced to marry the heart. Like, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. So when you talk about biblical marriages, let's talk about them because they look pretty distorted to me.
That's
like,
really
you know what I'm saying?
Like, right. They because they're human. But I'm talking about what the standard says it is, right? There's a biblical standard in how to operate. Yes, right. They're understood that we're flawed people and we're going to make mistakes as a result of that. But what should it look like? Dwayne, what's up, man? Have you been listening to this at all?
I have. I jumped in.
Say it again?
No, I was listening. Whenever I jumped in, y'all were talking about cakes.
Not Debbie.
So no, I've been catching a little bit of this.
Okay, so I'm gonna transition. Unless you wanted to add to this particular conversation, I was trying to say that, you know, one of the stumbling blocks is going to be sex. If you're trying to have a biblical marriage, that's what I was saying. And Proto was saying, well, you need to try to get the cakes before somebody else does, because it limits the opportunity for her to go somewhere else. What's your thoughts? What say ye?
Well, I believe at the beginning, y'all should be going through the hard times together. Y'all supposed to be holding y'allself. I mean, when we went through, my wife and I, when we went through marriage counseling, the fact that we were living together was a bad thing. It was considered a bad thing. And in order to be allowed to go through the class, we had to sign an agreement that we would not have sex. We would abstain from sex during the time that we're going through the class. So there's a reason for that. And the reason I believe is withholding from something to gain something greater is biblical. So both partners should be doing that, and with respect to each other in that regard. So even with inside of marriage, it says you shouldn't withhold from your partner, sex from your partner, unless there's an agreement that is made. So in the same instance, an agreement should be made before that. This is what we would like to do as for abstain from these things. And then you set boundaries together on how to do that. And I think that right there builds connection and builds a strong relationship.
That's really dope. I want to go back to, unless Lost, you wanted to chime in on this, you can.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think Dwayne and Prototype are talking about two different stages in the relationship. Prototype is talking about the beginning, you know, when you're getting to know somebody. And when you're in marriage counseling, you've already committed to each other. It's just a matter of time. I have to ask Prototype a question. He was saying that she could be giving the cakes to somebody else. Well, my thing is this: it really depends on the location. You know, where did you meet her? Did you meet at the white tablecloth restaurant, or did you meet at the buffet?
I said I met her at the queue. I met her at the
buffet, man. There's a lot of people, man, at the table. You know, going there and get a little piece of this, a little piece of that. But at the white tablecloth, man, it don't work like that. Can't nobody just walk up to your table and take stuff off your table. You know what I'm saying? So if you're trying to have a marriage that's biblically sound, location is everything, man. And you got to, worry about exactly who you're dealing with. If you're worrying about her smashing somebody else, then I don't think that person really qualifies for a biblical marriage, to be honest. Because think about it. If you're having a hard time doing that now, what's to stop them from doing it when they get upset with you later on? Or they just start creating fights just so they can leave the house to give their little Debbies to somebody else, So it's all about where you start, man, and location and where you meet them, man. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Now, as far as Dwayne is concerned, absolutely, there should be an agreement, and it should be talked about in the beginning, and not something that you spring on somebody. There's always one person says, "Well, you know what? I think I'm going to be, fasting and this, that, and the other," and the other person doesn't really agree. Well, y'all need to have a conversation and say, "Hey, look, why are we doing this? You know what I'm saying? You drug me into this. I didn't necessarily ask for this. You know what I'm saying? I have clarity." So that's one of those things that you got to talk about. But it goes back to what we talked about earlier, agreement. If you don't have agreement, man, nothing goes well. So I think agreement is one of those things that people need to learn to work on the most.
That's really good. Agreeing, and that's a part of the conversation, right? And it's a part of that listening and talking to one another. I want to go back. I don't know who has said it, but this is the question that I posed. How do you prepare for triggers you don't know exist? Because once you get married, there are going to be some things that bother you from your spouse that will cause an argument that you did not see coming. So my question to the panel is, how do you prepare for triggers you don't know exist? What you got on it, Charlton?
Yeah, so that's a phenomenal question, because the reality is like you said, the triggers are going to exist. You are going to uncover things about your spouse that you did not know going into the relationship. You're going to uncover things about yourself that you did not know going into a relationship. The thing about marriage and the beauty of marriage is also the Achilles heel of marriage. It'll bring out the best of you and it'll bring out the worst of you. And I don't think anybody who's been married any amount of time can say, like, I expected the emotional highs that I experienced in marriage and I didn't expect the emotional lows. So the triggers are definitely coming. I think it does boil down to you as an individual knowing how to maintain your frame. I think every man understands that you can't be driven by your emotions, not as a man. You've got to be a rock for your family. You've got to be a rock for your marriage. And the reality is like you have to practice keeping your emotions under control outside of situations that trigger. The reality is like you're not going to make the right decision inside of the situation. You have to make the decision outside of the situation going in, saying, I'm not going to allow situations to trigger me, because the reality is as a man, the things that you say can really cause ramifications and ripple effects through your marriage. You could easily rip your wife apart if you say the wrong thing, and then she just won't recover from it. So you have to be careful, but you just have to know that those triggers are going to come. I think that obviously the best thing to do is that when those triggers do come, deal with the situation, but don't address it in the midst of the situation. I think that's the biggest mistake that most people make, is that when they get upset and they get triggered by something and something, hits them, they immediately want to address it right then. No, wait for emotions to subside. Give it a moment, however a moment needs to be, a few minutes, few hours, a few days, and go back to it when saner heads can prevail, and be like, hey, by the way, such and such happened the other day. I just want to be honest with you. I was not feeling it. So we need to figure this out. And we've been saying it. I think Loss has said it several times. Communication is key. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to be a doormat. Just because somebody triggered something doesn't mean you have to soak it up and just take it, and no, I mean, it needs to be addressed. You know what I'm saying? You don't sit up and let somebody just be a punching bag, but at the same time, don't allow these situations to pull you out of a place that you don't need to be.
That's what's up. Who you got going next?
I haven't had the opportunity to interact with Dwayne, man. So I want to hear what the man's got to say.
Here we go.
Much appreciated, sir. I think best way to prepare is through the study of the word. And I say that because it helps so much with self-awareness. Like from the baseline, you're deficient. So from the jump, you're deficient. So in that opens the door to for you to analyze things about yourself and the things that make you tick, so that you can have better interactions and relationships with people. Because most of the times, we get to pointing fingers out at other people. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. But when we take an accounting of what we're responsible for and our actions, man, I believe we see the world through a whole different lens, and it opens us up um, to accountability ultimately. So inside of a marriage, you have to be able to be accountable for your actions at all times, even whenever you do things that are uncharacteristic, and owning up to it and then figuring out why it happened. I go with Frodo.
I mean, there's no real way to prepare for things you don't notice a trigger or you see it's coming, but you have to build your resilience to handle all things, no matter how they come. Um, Build the discipline and the emotional intelligence to understand I can get through this and keep my head down, keep working, and just believe in yourself. Have the confidence to know, like, I'm smart enough to get on the other side of this. But I mean, if you don't see it coming, you don't see it coming. But if you have that resilience built up, then, what I'm saying, you could pretty much trust you can get through anything you need to. So
That's really good. Build up your resilience, your tolerance. What's up, Lost?
I think a lot of times people don't take into consideration that when you're teammates, you kind of got to show up to practice together. You know what I'm saying? It's like you got to go to church together, so that way you both can have the same lessons. A lot of times, man, people don't take a lot of credence into that. I'll give you an example. When I played football, man, I was the left tackle, and my homie Willie was the left guard. And between me and him, based upon what we saw and what I felt that we can get a hold of in different blocking schemes, I would call 88. I'll call a 21. He'll know exactly what that is. 22. I'll go first. You go around. You know what I mean? Depending on what the play is. So if we practice that, we'll know exactly. And when we reach to that particular situation, if I say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do, instead of telling, the other guy, tipping them off what the signal is, I'll be able to say, hey, look, we running a 21. I just call the number out and he'll automatically know that I slam down, he come around. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. It's the same way in relationships, man. You kind of go to church together, man. You kind of got to grow together. And that way, when you do hit those triggers, y'all already know exactly how to handle it. It's nothing worse than having somebody hit a trigger. It's like a landmine that you didn't know was there. And all of a sudden, people are starting to use microaggressions and try to use that to punish you, instead of using that opportunity to explain to them why it actually triggers them. And I think that goes both ways. You can't just spring your emotions on somebody and expect them to deal with it if you don't have that conversation. So like I stated earlier, you kind of got to go to practice together so you can kind of hedge those things off. So when it does happen, you both have already established a method to say, hey, look, when we reach a certain point, when we're angry, this is how we're going to handle it. So you have to have some type of agreement in advance. And I think that's the best way to handle it. And then the minute somebody says, hey, they get out of line and they don't handle it the way you agreed upon, then at that point, that's when accountability kicks in and say, hey, look, we agreed that we wouldn't call each other names when we're angry. We agreed that nobody would leave the house when the other person was angry. We agreed that nobody would sleep on the couch when we're angry. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. We agreed that we're not going to let the sun go down on our anger. Those type of things. And I think if you have that agreement in the beginning, then it's possible to hold one another accountable when you have those storms.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Festering on that. What I was thinking about is, if you don't have game film to watch, how do you prepare? Right? So what I thought and what I saw was, because of the internet, or even if we go to the Bible, if we didn't have the internet, there are scenarios that you can read about, and kind of prototypes of position. He says that there was not really there were some really bad marriages in the Bible, right? But we can go to those marriages and we can say, you know what? How would you handle this situation? Or what does it look like to handle this situation well? What do you see from your perspective, and what do I see from my perspective? And does it line up with the Bible, right? And then the other part of that, as how you prepare yourself for that, is something that is called the Bible, specifically a scripture. There, it is James 1 and 19, right? It says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." So that was it. I wish I would have read that earlier in my life. I think it would have saved me a lot of problems in my communication strategy, because I got triggered when, and sometimes now, but not as much, I would get triggered when you would say something that sounded disrespectful. Now, it could have been, or it may not have been. However, if I was to have that scripture in my heart, like I try to do now, I would be able to de-escalate a lot of situations and conversations that went awry. So, for example, if I'm talking to my wife, or I'm talking to my students, or I'm talking to Dwayne, or I'm talking to Des, and I begin to listen first, slow to speak, allow them to finish their thought pattern, allow them to talk out whatever it is that they're saying, that allows me time to regulate my own emotions. And then I need to also season my response as palatable as possible. But I like what Charlton says. He says, you may need to delay in talking about your trigger, right? That you didn't know was there. So I would say the part of the scripture that that needs to be allocated in this particular situation is to read James 1 and 19, as well as you to do the fruit of the Spirit. That's Ephesians 5:22, I want to say. Then you can also look at 1 Corinthians, where it talks about love is patient, love is kind, which is alluding to what Lost in Translation was talking about. And also understand and remember that y'all on the same team, right? That what it is that they said, do you believe that they were trying to sin against you? I think Dwayne would ask me that question. Dwayne and Des would ask me, was it a sin that were they intentionally sinning against you? And that means that you have to provide them also grace, right? You have to provide them grace. What's your thoughts on that? Nobody had anything? Ah, this what's up. I dropped the mic. Is that what y'all saying?
Honestly, I want to talk about what you just thrown out there, but I wanted to kind of add something to the plate a little bit, because we're talking about triggers inside of marriage, and I want to talk about triggers in the relationship stage, particularly for relationships that where people were living together. You know what I'm saying? Before they got married. Because one thing that I've seen, and I'm asking this. I'm not telling. I'm asking. In this for people to give perspective. One thing I've seen is people can be in a relationship for 5 years, even 10 years. I know people that lived together for 10 years and got married and were divorced in a year, and it's something about the pressure cooker of a marriage that makes these triggers flesh out differently. So I really want to see if we can speak to some of these people who may be playing house. And they're like, oh, yeah, we're married. We live together, but are you really married? You see what I'm saying? Because those triggers hit different. It's got to. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if anybody's got any perspective on that tied into your conversation about grace.
I got plenty of context for that, right? Living together, the lease ends eventually. You understand what I'm saying? You always have you always have hope. That you can go elsewhere, that you could leave, you know what I'm saying? And the thought of that not being able to leave causes a panic. You know what I'm saying? Like the sheer thought of I can't do what I used to do, or I don't have an out, cause you to go like, oh my God, I can't do it. You know what I'm saying? But as long as you know you have an out, you might not act on it. You know what I'm saying? But the moment you don't have an out, the moment them cell doors lock. And I'm not saying marriage is like prison, but I'm just saying, but the moment them cell doors lock, you're like, oh, I can't leave. You know what I'm saying? And now all you can think about is leaving. You know what I'm saying? But when the option was there to leave, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to eat sweets until you can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you go on a diet, that's when you want sweets the most. You understand what I'm saying? Before that diet, you might have a candy bar here, you might have a donut there. But when they say no donuts, you're like, oh man, I can't do it. I can't do 3 days of juicing.
So are they really building prototype? Like when they're living together?
No. I mean,
are they really building a relationship, or is it like?
And that's what I'm saying. A lot of people fall into stuff. You know what I'm saying? No, I don't think you're building a relationship. You're just going with it. You know what I'm saying? You're not addressing things. People let a lot of things go under the bridge. You know what I'm saying? That communication comes in when you're really trying to make things work. But when you have a coworker and you know you're applying to other things and you don't like this coworker, you stop talking to them. But when you get that job, when you first work at that job and you don't think you're going anywhere, you're communicating with that coworker. Hey, let's hash this out. You know what I'm saying? Let's try to get on the same page here. But when you start applying for another job and you got another outcoming, you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of like y'all seen Life, right? Y'all seen Life when it was, yeah, my cousin is trying to get me out. My lawyer cousin's trying to get me out. He ain't want to talk. But when that got cut off, hey, what's that escape plan you got going? I think we can make it out. Ray Gibson was like, we now? What happened in that letter? Now we.
So I would say that the stats are not in their favor that they're going to be married, because they're really ultimately playing house. And I would say that there is a fear that they believe that they might not have chosen the one that they should spend the rest of their life with. Secondly, some people use this is a way for the government to have dibs on us. So they may use that thought pattern. And then they may say, well, we just go with the flow. And when it happens, it happens. There's so many different scenarios that are faced, but ultimately, I think about, I gotta check the stats again. I think it's pretty high, maybe like 80% that live together do not stay married, or even a lot of them don't even reach the goal of marriage, because once you man, let me go back. So I'm sure y'all have had roommates before. maybe not. I'm thinking about college. I had roommates that I couldn't stand, and I could not wait for the semester to be over so that they could not be my roommate again. And so if I liken it to that, considering what Prototype was saying, I know that I have an out after this lease is up, because this is a temporary thing. And that pressure to come with, I'm gonna be marrying this person. This person don't cook, don't clean, they don't wash themselves well. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get to see all their flaws, and I have an opportunity to leave because I know what those flaws are, and those flaws I just can't deal with. Whereas when you get into the marriage, you begin to see the flaws, and you still love them and still work with them anyway. That's a different type of a challenge, and a different type of perspective, a different type of love and appreciation for that person. And so I would say to kind of answer that question, to that person that is living together, if you're living together and you are not, and you're afraid to be married, then living together is not going to help that come to fruition. it would be more wise of you to go to counseling together and talk about what it looks like to be married, similar to what we talked about, and what would happen if you did this and I did this. How would we resolve that scenario? Because it is hard to resolve a scenario you never faced before while you're in the fire of it, right? So I would challenge them to go to marriage counseling if that's what they so choose to do. Who else? What you got?
You know, I think that a lot of times people don't understand the pressures of marriage looming over a relationship before you get married, especially if you live together. What happens is that you get to focusing on things that are not really stuff that really don't matter. You know what I mean? Think about it. You'll come home, the first thing you want about, hey, what's for dinner? You know, how did the kids do, you know, from school, this, that, and the other. What else needs to be done around the house? You don't never have the conversations you need to have about what's really important, you know, and that's the reason why most older people will tell you shouldn't live together, because A, you'll value the other person's time more, and you'll really get to know them because you already know that there's a carrot dangling on the other end. And so I can't get to the carrot unless I do my homework. You know what I'm saying? I can't get to dessert unless I eat my vegetables. You see what I'm saying? That type of thing. And I think when you move in with somebody, you put the dessert first, you know, and you get satiated. And as long as you're getting what you're getting and that person's getting what they're getting, then what happens is you never really have the hard conversations. So when those triggers come up, y'all never discussed how to handle it, you know, and all of a sudden it's a problem, you know, and then on top of that, you put that thing in the back of your mind about, well, when we get married, it's like, we argue, man, nobody got time to get married. How are we going to get married? And we can't even agree about this, that, the other, you know? So it keeps getting pushed back. And then eventually there's always that ejector seat button say, you know what, this ain't going to work. I'm out of here. I ain't got nothing to lose. I'm gone. So I think a lot of times that's what happens in relationships. And the reason why they fail so much when people move in together is because they don't value each other's time enough to put in the work to ask the difficult questions and to have the difficult conversations. Like life insurance policy, how you plan on raising kids, you know, those things are important. You know, if you have one person who's teaching the kids how to take advantage of people and that goes against your beliefs, then that's going to be a problem. You see what I'm saying? You're gonna be quick to hit that ejector seat button. But my whole thing is this: if you had that conversation ahead of time, then you would already know that, hey, this ain't gonna work for me. Thank you for not wasting my time. I'm glad you didn't waste mine. And you wash your hands, you move on about it. And I don't think we really go about handling situations like that properly because we want what we want, you know, or we want what we think we want, so to speak. And until you actually do your due diligence, you're not necessarily going to get what you really want. All you're going to do is waste your time.
Dwayne, did you want to say something on this?
No, I let it ride. Y'all did good.
Well, we appreciate you telling us that we did good. And by the way, I must commend you on you coming back. You have been doing an excellent job with this mute button. Okay. I just need the world to know that Dwayne has done an outstanding job of pressing the mute button on time. Listen, because everybody know who's watched the show. You didn't, Charlton. Absolutely. Hey, listen, you're supposed to say praise God. That's what you're supposed to say. You're not supposed to accept it.
Well, I was going somewhere with it. So there's a podcast workshop that I went to, and there was a breakout session. I'm kidding. But I appreciate you though.
All right, man. This has been good so far. It's kind of heavy though. Listen, so I wanted to break it up just a little tad bit. And so I was trying to find my question. That one, the trigger one just came to me while you all was talking. And so I was trying to find out what that looks like and how people could kind of navigate through that. So some of these questions we've talked about before, and so I had to kind of figure out what would be important to talk about before we get out of here. So I think something that is productive to talk about for each one of us is this question. Where are we at? How do you define a biblical marriage or a successful marriage? How would you define one? Or what would you want that to look like? What would you want that to look like? How do you define success in marriage? How do you define success in marriage? We'll rock out with you. Dwayne, let's get it.
I'll knock this out. Loss was talking about it earlier, that y'all were talking about it earlier. Agreement. If you meet up with y'all's agreement, that's a successful marriage. What y'all agreed upon before getting into the marriage, if y'all cross the finish line with that intact, that's a successful marriage. So if you're both biblically based, and then you fulfill your vows and your commitment, and you're honoring God, and your goal is to have godly offspring. Oh yeah, there you go. That's successful right there.
That seems pretty simple. What you got, Charlton?
Yeah, this is one of those conversations that's like it could go so many different directions. Like how you define success. Like that's like barbershop. Like who's the greatest of all time? Who's the greatest basketball player of all time? It's like, well, it depends on like what the metrics are. Like what do you people like Jordan, LeBron, Kobe? It's like what are you looking at exactly? Like you looking at influence? You looking at stats? You know, you looking at what you're looking at, and it's the same thing. Like how you define a successful marriage? It depends on what you're looking at. You know. So like I'm gonna say something, but by all means, I feel like this is like the end all be all. But I would say that you have a successful marriage when you are giving the marriage your best. That's to me is the definition, and it's kind of crazy because I heard a phenomenal piece of relationship advice from none other than Floyd Mayweather of all people. But right, the Floyd Mayweather. But somebody had asked him, they were like, "How do I know that this guy really loves me, like, and really cares for me?" Because it's like sometimes you can have a guy that's super wealthy, right? And guys that are super wealthy can do things for you that the average guy walking up and down the street can't do. But does that mean that he loves you? You know what I'm saying? Like a billionaire can spend $75,000 on a Mercedes and buy that for you, whereas the average man walking up and down the street can't just drop that kind of cash. Does that mean he doesn't love you because he can't do it? Well, here's the reality. That billionaire, though he gave you a $75,000 car, isn't giving you his best. So if he's willing to sacrifice to the point that he's giving you his best, then he loves you. And even if that average man walking down the street, who whatever his best is, you know. But see the reality, because one thing I'm listening to when I was asking a question earlier about people who are living together but aren't married, I heard Prototype say something that stuck with me. He was like, they always feel like they got a ripcord in the back. They can always bail out. So because you know in the back of your mind you can bail out, you're pulling your punches through the whole relationship. You ain't giving that relationship your best. You know what I'm saying? You're loving out of fear. You're loving out of convenience. So I would say a successful marriage is when you are not pulling your punches anymore. You give it your all. Put it all out there because you know that that's what you want to do. You want to love your spouse as best you can. You want them to be happy, and that's what it's going to take. So it's an inward thing to me. You know what I'm saying? When you put it all out there and you know that's your best, you've reached a place of success.
So are you saying that an individual will be able to determine that the marriage is successful without the other person's input?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, man. Okay. So I would, ooh, I don't even know how to answer that, man. Because I'm gonna say, at the end of the day, all you could do is give your best. You know what I'm saying? So it's like if you give your best, and then that person turns around and says, "I don't like what you're giving me." You know what I'm saying? You know, what more can they give you than their best? You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you can't just like be like, "Well, I'm giving you this, you better take it." You know what I'm saying? It's just like their feedback is important. You know what I'm saying? So that's a hard question to answer. You know, but.
So you're gonna bail out and not answer it? That what you're saying? We don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? That is not what we do. You have to give an answer, sir. So I'll ask it again if I need to. Based upon what you said internally, if you've given your best, because you said it was an inward thing. So if you believe you've given your best, then are you the one that is determining success without the other person's feedback?
I would say, as you know, keeping in the spirit of what we've been talking about, communication is so critical. So if your spouse is giving you feedback that something is missing, then your best is within your abilities to answer whatever the call is. And 10 times out of 10, what your spouse is asking you is something that is achievable, you know, whether it's time, attention, you know what I'm saying, some type of expression of love. You know, it is achievable, but I would say communication is that feedback is important. Yes.
So that's a no. Basically what you're saying.
You're saying that no, the success is not defined within yourself.
Correct.
That's what you're saying.
I'm saying, I'm saying based on what you said, that it was based upon you and not the other person. What you just said now is that you're going to need the other person's feedback to know if your best is good enough.
Correct, but you are defining your best based on their feedback.
So then you do need their feedback.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
So then it's not intrinsic.
Not exclusively.
Okay, that's what I was getting to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to, because you want the other person to know that what you're doing is best. You're giving your best. You want that to be acknowledged, right? Like when your wife say, "Hey, Charlton, I love when you did that. That was dope. Or that was awesome." She probably don't use those words, you know. Like I just told Kendra, I was like, "Man, that food was amazing." So she knows that what she did was very good, and that is more likely she's going to try to do that again. That as opposed to her saying, "I know my food's good," but if I say no, it was okay, then where does she go from there? You know what I'm saying? I would need to provide her that information. Is what I'm saying. What's up, Proto? What you got on it? You probably gonna say, I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna say there's no such thing as a successful marriage.
I'm not even close to that. I'm almost close to letting Loss go before me, just to see if he says what I'm going to say.
Okay, let's get it. Let's get it.
Humbledad, to answer your question earlier, when you said that you need feedback from another person to determine whether that was your best or not, I would say no. My best is my best, regardless of whether you accept it or not. And I think we need to get back down to the brass tacks of what we really need to talk about, which is expectations. You know, say for instance, if you have somebody who's never ever experienced money or whatever, and you give them a $75,000 car, to them you've exceeded their expectations. So in their mind, you've given them your best. You see what I'm saying? In Charleston's example. But if you have somebody who comes from wealth, who comes from money, and you give them a $75,000 car, they was like, "No, I'm used to Maybachs. That's not good enough." You know, knowing full well that ain't your best. So your best is your best, whether they accept it or not. And I think in relationships, that is one thing that we don't address. You can have one guy, like you said earlier, knocking himself out, working 80 hours a week and not be appreciated and giving his all, where he only sleeps maybe about 2 or 3 hours a day, giving everything he got. And then he has an ungrateful wife that says, "You know what? That's not good enough. You're not here for me. You know, Charles down the street gives me more time." You know what I mean? Because you're never at home. You know, those type of things. You have to make sure that whoever you're doing this for is having the right expectations, and then also show some type of appreciation for somebody's efforts. A lot of times in relationships, people argue over effort. That's the main reason why women want guys to wash the dishes and guys want women to come out there and cut the grass, just so you can see that it's not an equal balance. You see what I'm saying? So I think a lot of times people want to get what they put into a situation, but relationships are not built that way. You're not always going to get what you put into it. But I will tell you this, you need to be grateful for what you get out of it, because that person really didn't have to be there, you know? And I think we take that for granted, but it goes back to maturity. I think maturity defines a successful marriage, because if you mature to the point where you have an understanding, or give people grace, or hear people out when they have something to say, or don't initiate these microaggressions that people have when you feel the slightest bit of pressure or displeasure, then I think that sets the tone for an atmosphere where people can actually feel comfortable revealing who they are truly, and then they can express what's really on their heart. A lot of times, we talk about in the Bible, what's in your heart will come out of your mouth. But my thing is this: if your ears heard something that you want to hear, even if it's in your heart, your mouth might not want to say it, because there's something in you that say, I really don't want to be detached from this person, because of what if I say something the wrong way, they might leave or whatever. So I think that when you reach a certain level of maturity where you can say what you need to say to the other person in a way that they can receive it, then I think that in itself is a successful marriage.
Man, that is phenomenal. Maturity is a combination of things for sure. Proto, what you got?
Can I challenge that real quick though?
Hold on.
Sure.
So Lost, real quick. The prototype, I'm gonna be done in 2 seconds. Lost, you said something really quickly. You said about expectations, right? You said in order to have a successful, know that you're giving your all, it's determined on the person's expectations, right? So isn't that communication? Isn't that feedback in and of itself?
Well, here's the thing: people don't always communicate that. Sometimes people spring stuff on you, man. They don't always.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. I'm just saying that success isn't within isolation. It's not within a silo. You have to give a person space to give you feedback and say, hey, I appreciate this. You can't just force your definition of success on somebody, be like, you need to appreciate this, and if you don't, something's wrong with you. How is that a relationship?
That's two different conversations. When I said I gave my best, that was my best.
Okay.
That's it. Either they accept it or they don't. It's the same way. It's the same way. Say, for instance, if you run a 40 and you got somebody who runs a 4.5 40, that's all I got. You can expect me to run a 4.3 all day long, but all I got is 4.5.
Correct. No, I got you. I got you on that. But so what the feedback might be in your example there is, instead of you playing a corner, you're going to play middle linebacker. You know what I'm saying? And you will be successful within the feedback that your coach gives you, because it's according to whatever your speed will allow you to play. That's my thing, because I agree with you. There are toxic people out there with ridiculous expectations. And even with what Humbledad was saying, about that, you cannot define success within your own mind. Yeah, there are people out there that will string you out and drive you crazy. I agree with you 1,000%. And if you're a man out there, like what you said, who's working 80 crazy hours and he comes home tired, and maybe he doesn't have all the conversation in the world because he's tired, I get it. You know what I'm saying? You give it your best. And if you have a loving wife, she needs to appreciate that. And but I think we're talking about maybe more in an ideal situation here, or maybe we're talking about in more reality. Let's just say that we're talking about balance. I feel like it's healthy, for a man to take into consideration what the expectations of his wife are, what the expectation of his wife is, to say, hey, like, I'm being successful because she's happy as well, in addition to giving your all. That's just what I'm saying.
Well, that goes back to what I said earlier about being mature. Why is your happiness determined upon somebody else's efforts? Happiness is an inside job. You decide to be happy, just like you decide to be angry. You decide to give love, that type of thing. I think when you're mature, no matter what your spouse does, if they're giving the effort that they have to give them, the first thing that should come out of your mouth should be thank you. It should be gratitude. And I think we have a very hard time with gratitude in relationships. I'll give you an example. Say, for instance, if your wife beats you home and she runs your bath water and then she cooks you dinner or whatever, and you never tell her thank you, don't you think she'll feel slighted some way? Exactly. That's how men are sometimes. And vice versa in different relationships. So I think there's a certain level of maturity and awareness that comes with a successful marriage, because not only are you aware of your presence, you're aware of the other person's presence and efforts as well. That is a certain level of maturity that I think a lot of people don't get to, is being aware of the other person's needs and also being aware of your own needs, so you don't lose yourself in that relationship. So you show up present for the relationship.
But bro, you keep coming back to this communication piece. The person says thank you, right? Is that not feedback? Is that not them saying your best is appreciated?
But does it fulfill that person's expectations? Some people could just say that.
They could, but I mean, come on. Most of the time, people are being genuine. They're saying, "Hey, I recognize your effort. I'm giving you feedback." That's what HG was saying. Your spouse is giving you feedback based on this best effort that you're giving. Success, and I can agree. It goes both ways. You give it your all, and then they have to be mature, like you said, and say thank you out of a genuine heart.
Right.
But that does tie into what HG was saying. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's good. I think, man, that's a really good dialogue. I think what people have that's very good if they're paying attention. The Bible says to live with your wife in an understanding way, and if she more than likely, hopefully, she's paying attention to you as well. And I was just thinking here, just being on a panel with you guys for quite some time, not necessarily Charlton, but everybody else. I already have an idea of what your best looks like. So, with that being said, I know from the time that I spent with you guys that when you don't seem like you give it your all because of however you may be feeling or what the thought or the conversation may be at the time, and vice versa. I mean, there have been times on the podcast where y'all reach back and I was like, HD, like, what's going on? Are you not okay? Like, you don't seem like yourself. And so we can liken that to when we're dealing with our wives or when our wives are dealing with us, is that they can recognize. I think we should give people the benefit of the doubt on that they can recognize when we have given our best, when we have arrived at expectations, or when we need to give a little bit more. They will also give the grace in that regard too, that they're wise enough to be able to do both. Hopefully that answers the question. And we're gonna rock with you, Prototype. What you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna close this thing on out, man. I guess
Let's
I'm
get it.
lost today. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if I'm the only one being biblical right now. You know what I'm saying? But I'm gonna go with what is it? Matthew 7:20. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna go with Genesis 1:28. I'm gonna go with Genesis 1:31. You understand what I'm saying? It's about a fruit, baby. It's about a fruit is how you know that your marriage is successful. What your kids look like. You know what I'm saying? What you producing. You know what I'm saying? God made something and then look back on saying it was good. You know what I'm saying? So if the marriage is producing fruit, that's how you know it's successful. You know what I'm saying? And that's where I'm gonna land that plane. You know what I mean?
Bruh,
Well
that
done,
plane
sir.
was phenomenal. That was a phenomenal journey. Hit them with the receipts and put us in the moment of being able to practically execute that particular passage. So I really appreciate that. Didn't expect that. The expectation was not that from Prototype, and you have exceeded it. Just so you know, as my mentor would say, he says that you get an A plus to infinity. That's what he says. And so this has been a really dope conversation. I mean, if I just had to add what the definition of success in a marriage is, it's when you've made it to the end and you have fought, you have loved, you have been productive in your journey. When you both can look back and say that you have done what God has asked you to do and requires you to do, even in the ups and the downs, the better for worse, the richer or for poorer, that in the end, when your spouse, if he or she leaves before you do, you can come back and say, I see that marriage was a success. Were there things that I could work on? Yes. But I also know that there was great things that I achieved within that marriage, and I became a better person as a result of that marriage. And I think that is what success in a marriage looks like. So shout out to the panel, Lost in Translation. Make sure you check him out on all platforms. Prototype as well on all platforms. Dwayne Jones Photography, you know what I'm saying? He's a photographer by trade and he fixes automobiles as well. I don't know if you want me to tell people that, but I just did. And then Charlton, you know what I'm saying? He has his podcast and he's doing great things as well on his, but it's not Charlton. What Prototype is Prototype Dad. So make sure y'all check out Prototype Dad or Prototype Kingdom. Either one of those, you'll get to him. And Charlton, what's yours again? I keep forgetting.
It's all good. It's called Just Teach Ministries.
Just Teach Ministries, and he goes through a Bible study and breaks down the scripture for you in that regard. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the channel. Your boy is working on something. I can't tell everybody, but I've told the people that need to know. I'm working on something for the married and the single people, and I'll keep you posted on how that goes. Until next time, we out here. Deuces. Peace.
The boy is dangerous.
Bad feeling about this.
You don't seem to understand something.
The thing that I like most about being a dad is that I see that I'm about to impact the world.